A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John chapter 19, verses 31 to 37. Passage taken from the Message version of the Bible. Then the Jews, since it was the day of Sabbath preparation, and so the bodies wouldn't stay on the crosses over the Sabbath. It was a high holy day that year. Petitioned Pilate that the legs be broken to speed death, and the bodies taken down. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first man crucified with Jesus, and then the other. When they got to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they didn't break his legs. One of the soldiers stabbed him in the side with his spear. Blood and water gushed out. The eyewitness to these things has presented an accurate report. He saw it himself and is telling the truth so that you also will believe. These things that happened confirmed the scripture. Not a bone in his body was broken. And the other scripture that reads, "They will stare at the one they pierced." The Gospel of the Lord.
Reflections on the Gospel according to John chapter 19, verses 31 to 37. The most Sacred Heart of Jesus. On the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, we celebrate the love of God for all humanity. Day before yesterday, on June 9th, during his general audience, Pope Francis recommended all the faithful to look with trust to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and to repeat often, especially during this month of June, this prayer. Jesus, meek and humble of heart, transform our hearts and teach us to love God and neighbor with generosity. Addressing the elderly, young people, the sick, and newlyweds, he prayed, "May the heart of Christ, the source of love that redeemed the world, always accompany and sustain you." Jesus has brought the unconditional love of God the Father closer and accessible to us through his heart of flesh, the heart of God. He is not a distant and terrible God before whom we should feel fearful and unworthy, but a Father who cares for us and who arouses trust and love in us. This is what we experience as we approach Jesus in humility. In today's Gospel, John the Evangelist continues his reflection on the meaning and the impact of the saving death of Jesus. There is some gruesome detail here. In crucifixion, a person dies primarily of inability to breathe. Crucified person breathes by pushing himself up on his legs, although the legs too are nailed to the cross. Clearly, by breaking the legs of the two thieves, the soldiers were hastening their deaths as they no longer have the strength to breathe. When they found Jesus already dead, they thrust a spear into his heart just to make sure. John was writing for the disciples who had never known the historical person of Christ. He was concerned that they do not forget this most important event in the life of Jesus and that they believe. The blood and water that poured from the pierced side of Christ referred them to their experience of baptism and Eucharist celebrated within the believing community. Here, through the sacrament of the Eucharist, we continue to participate personally in the mystery enacted historically on Calvary. In John chapter 7, we are told of Jesus at the temple during the Feast of the Tabernacles. Standing there, he cried out, "Let anyone who thirsts come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture says, rivers of living water will flow from within him." On the cross, Jesus gave up His Spirit, and that Spirit is poured forth as the rivers of living water to give life and refreshment to the thirsty world. As we raise our minds and hearts to God in prayer on this feast of the most sacred heart, let us unite our hearts with the heart of Jesus, so that the deepest longings of Christ's sacred heart may become the deepest longings of our own.